Hi, everybody. Hope y'all are having a good Thursday so far. My name is Tyler Crumpler, and I'm on the Instruct marketing team. I'm going to pass things over to TJ, who is our Chief Customer Officer here at Instruct, who's going to be really doing all the moderating. And, thanks for joining us today, TJ. I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Tyler, and thanks for running things to make sure it goes smoothly. Super excited to be here today with Michael Biocchi, just an expert in a lot of different things, and we're going to cover a wide range of topics today. For myself, I've actually joined the Instruct team. I'm a former customer as well. I've been using Instruct since 2018, so I'm a bit of a fan, and we'll talk about that too. But Michael, why don't you go ahead and give a brief introduction for yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's great to meet the team at Instruct, and it's great to do. So thank you. My name's Mike. I work with Snyk. I'm part of the Snyk Learn team, which is what we'll talk about a little bit today as well too when we talk about security education. I come from academia, and then I'm kind of here now in the private sector cybersecurity world. Still doing education, but it's a little bit different now.
Yeah, just a little bit different, and I think what's nice about today, we're going to cover where that overlaps as well. So just to kind of go over the agenda for folks, we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to start first with the fundamental problems of technical education. I would imagine a lot of folks here that are joining us, these are the things that they're struggling with, how to best do that, what are the best practices, and then talk a lot about the hands-on learning. How do you integrate that well into a technical education program? And then we're actually going to have a nice learning track demo. Mike's going to be able to showcase some of his work, which is really cool. And as Tyler said, you can ask questions, please, during the webinar, but also if you want to wait to the end, we can take those there as well. So to dive into a little bit, like, why do teams choose Instruct? One of the things about Instruct that I love, again, former customer as well as, happy to be here today, Instruct is a flexible, hands-on lab experience, and you can use it in many ways. Our customers use it for training, for workshops, and their go-to-market strategies. So you can have instructor-led and self-paced training, for technical educators or product marketers using us for lead gen and demos and workshops. You can engage in multiple ways. Sales engineers using us for things like demos and POCs. The real goal is to be able to engage your learners where they are, and you can reach engineers in that immersive education way, like that hands-on learning. We're going to talk a lot about that today, but get them engaged and get them excited about your technology. So that's where we are today, and let's start to dive in. Help me understand, Mike. Let's start first and foremost. Why do developers choose Snyk?
Sure, I have two answers for this. So Snyk as a platform, so we're all about securing your software development lifecycle. It's a single platform. We want to secure your code. We want to secure your open source dependencies, container images, et cetera, and all that stuff. Basically, when it comes down to it, Snyk is about enabling developers to fix issues quickly. And with all that said, I'm part of a different team within Snyk, a team called Snyk Learn, where we want to not just kind of fix your security issues and have auto fix and stuff like that. We want to actually teach you why these vulnerabilities are happening, how to mitigate them, and make sure they don't happen again in the future.
Excellent. And it seems like one of the things that I thought was interesting as we prepped for this webinar is we share some common customers across there. So I think a big part of the message is there's a scale element to this as well, and that's going to tie into our education conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's dive into it then. A former educator, and now in the corporate side of things, let's kind of dive in. So what does developer training in education, kind of almost like in academia, look like, and what does it look like in the enterprise? Where do you see similarities and sometimes overlaps?
Yeah, similarities, but also differences. And I think we talked about this in our pre-chat a little bit too. Coming from academia, so I worked at a university. I was a developer, so I started my career off as a developer, working on these legacy systems, and that's just kind of how education sector is. And then I moved into a management role and then to a director role. And then I had an opportunity to move to teach full time. And I was teaching computer science, and I did that. And I still teach now part time. And teaching computer science students, a university college, you want that hands-on aspect. You want them to learn by doing and create code and write code. But a lot of times I find that cybersecurity is kind of left out of that curriculum. And so when these developers graduate and they move to their first job and they move to the workforce, what companies need to do now is not teach them how to code. They know how to do that, but they have to now teach them how to code securely and teach them about all these vulnerabilities. So the developer training in the workforce, personally, for me, it's trying to get all of your developers to a baseline. like we do with cyber awareness training. I'm sure most people on the call and yourself with Instruct, I'm sure you've done some yearly training, what is ransomware, what is, phishing attacks. That's great. And I think developers need that same kind of training, but specifically for, what makes code secure.
And I think one of the things we talked a little bit about, like kind of tied to that is that context problem. So it's like you learn concepts in college, and you probably gotten some internships, some real world experience. But when that really skilled developer then kind of hits the enterprise, there's a bit of a context switch that has to happen to say like, okay, this is what these problems look like in the real world, so to speak.
Yeah, in university,
do you see that as well? Like, do you kind of experience that?
Yeah, in college, university, students are working in the most pristine environment, right? Everything's updated, all the dependencies are updated, the code's all brand new. And so if they need to fix something, and it's their own code. So if they need to if they made a mistake or they need to fix something or improve upon their, project week by week, it's easy to do. It's their own code base. But when they get into that, that first job, odds are they're working on a legacy system, right? Depending what sector they go into. They might not be working with the latest JavaScript framework. They might be working with, something older. It's not their own code. So I think teaching students how to read code is really important, especially not their own code. And then finding vulnerabilities, when most college programs, when they're teaching about developing and programming, it's, object-oriented programming. They teach about all those core concepts. But like I said, it's not necessarily, how do we make that code secure? It's just how do we get your code running and how do we teach you how to code? So there's definitely a bit of a disconnect in that world.
Right. And do you feel like you have some insights, with a lot of the experience that you've had, like about like how do we better help those developers when they move into the organization? Like what is the first 90 days in an organization? Like how do we improve that to help them?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Those say first 60, first 90 days. I mean, developers, you're kind of getting thrown in the deep end, right? Like you're running full speed, and you're just trying to get caught up and learn the systems. So it's really tricky. And then if you want to ask your developer to, hey, can you step away for 2 days or for a week to go through some training? You're probably gonna get a lot of pushback on that. And it's not the ramp is short, right? To get a developer onboarded. And I think to get them up to speed with security, you have to find creative ways to do so, which is part of what we're doing right now with our Snyk Learn team. We're making this training bite-sized. We're making it, enjoyable. We're making it fun, hands-on a little bit, so that developers want to do it. And, we're not taking away 2-3 days of the week for it.
Right. I mean, we've heard ourselves here at Instruct, some of our customers, larger customers have articulated, sometimes it takes 4-6 months just to get a developer productive so that they're actually making changes in their production environments. And as so many will tell us, it's not because they're not good developers, right? They have to learn the contextual way of doing it within an organization. And really, like you highlighted earlier with security, right? That security is first and foremost, especially in these large organizations.
Yeah, I mean, it's the top of mind, I think, for every organization right now, and for every CISO, it's, how do we make sure that the code we're pushing to production is secure? Again, I don't think students are necessarily familiar with that. I keep talking about students, but it could be those junior developers. They might not be used to working with developing environments and staging environments and production environments. And so that can make it really difficult. So, if the stat says that it takes 6 months to make a developer productive, I believe it, because that's, like I said, it's a short ramp to get them started, but it's a long ramp to get them up to where they should be.
Right, up and productive and ready to go.
Yeah.
So I think you already kind of highlighted this, but I think this is, again, interesting for the folks attending here is what would some of the essentials be? So like if you had to build like a 101, 201, 301 framework for a new developer coming into an organization, kind of what do you think that would look like? Like what do those building blocks encompass?
I think you need to have an established onboarding program that includes developer education. Onboarding for any organization is pretty complex. It's onboarding with policies, onboarding with systems. There's lots of different stuff to go through with onboarding. And, it might be not just your department, but human resources might be involved. It's a big process. But developer education should be tied into that somewhere so that, again, you're having that new employee meet a baseline that all your other employees are meeting. And once they're at that baseline, once they understand the security policies, the security procedures, all the security controls that are in place and that need to be done, then you could really get them kind of ramped up and do more things in the organization. But it's a tough problem to solve. I mean, onboarding is it's complex. I mean, offboarding is complex too, but onboarding is really complex.
For sure. And what do you like? I mean, what are kind of some things that you've seen in the field today? Like, what do some of these enterprise training programs look like before they take this more hands-on learning approach?
I think they need to look like kind of what we're hoping to build. These small courses, which are informative, kind of all meat, not a lot of fluff to it, where a developer can go through. And there's lots of different kind of learning formats, video and audio and text. And I think with developers, you need to meet them where they are. So developers work in the IDE a lot of times. Let's kind of get that training in the IDE, which is, easier said than done, but it's something where you have to meet those developers halfway, or else they're just not going to want to do the training. And I see Sean just has a question here. Sorry, I can't not look at the questions when they come in. I'm used to teaching with students messaging me.
Okay, what do we got how do you convince long tenured developers? This is a good one to help build the onboarding and training. I think that's pretty relevant for staying right here.
It is. I find in my experience, if you ask these, long tenured developers to build something and to, maybe work with, if you have an instructional designer or somebody on staff. But I find a lot of times you get a lot of these more experienced developers, they want to help out. They want to kind of build something. It's sort of like their legacy they're building, right? It's hey, you're the expert. Take everything that you know and put it on a one-page PDF for this onboarding person. I find I haven't gotten a lot of pushback for people to do that. Now, timeline, if you want it for next week, probably not going to get it. But if you can work with a developer, and again, work with, if you have like an education department or an instructional designer, to build that out, I think that's a great idea. If you can get kind of your own employees building that stuff, it's really, really useful.
And as you said, Mike, earlier, one thing I see often with Instruct customers is they will focus that work in, hey, how do we get the expertise out of Mike's head? It's building hands-on tracks versus building like kind of documentation has been a real game changer, simply because now it's like a relevant thing. Like, you're going to show me because you're going to say, okay, it's not. Usually these aren't very straightforward things like we were talking about before. It's not vanilla. It's like, if you have to fix X, you need access to these systems. You need to be able to troubleshoot these network connections, name your problem. And having the ability to do that in a real sandbox environment, it's a bit of a powerful story for that. Yeah.
And I think if you don't put the full onus on that developer, if you ask them to maybe just do the technical parts, and then you can have somebody else do more of the writing and, making it kind of more like a training material. But if you can get that technical stuff done by an employee, if you can share the workload and do it that way, it's an excellent way to do it.
That's a great point. You could almost like buddy system it up, and then that way you both you come out with something meaningful, and you're basically spreading the knowledge around.
Yeah, I mean, knowledge is, that knowledge transfer is really important in any organization.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a great approach. We got to write that down as a to-do for after the webinar. All right, Tyler, why don't we head next to let's talk about integration. So I think you have a powerful story here to tell for Snyk. So let's talk about it. What are the fundamentals basically? Like, what are we striving for in the goals for the education program?
Yeah, so Snyk Learn started a little over 2 years ago, and we wanted to give back to the community. We wanted to not just fix, auto fix vulnerabilities and, do these auto pull requests and stuff like that. We wanted to actually teach developers and not have these vulnerabilities happen over and over again. And so we built Snyk Learn, and this is really just free secured education training that we give out. And I say free, and it's free. You can just go to the website right now, and you don't even have to log in. And we have this, I don't know, I forget how many lessons that we have, but it's all about, SQL injection, for example. What does that look like? What does bad code look like? And hopefully it doesn't look familiar, but what does bad code look like? Let's walk through an example of how this bad code, maybe is in production and gets exploited. And then let's go under the hood and let's actually look at why this happened, what line of the bad code actually did this. And then, of course, we talk about the mitigation, how to fix it. And so that's kind of our hands-on learning aspect is, we have these interactive widgets in these lessons so users can interact and click and see how an exploit will work. We have some terminals inside the browser, which, users can interact with that. But we really make it, each lesson, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes to get through. It's that small lesson for them to learn. And, we have a lot of success with this where our customers are happy. Non-customers are happy. Students, I've done guest lectures with different universities. We've partnered with NYU, which I'll be showing after. Their students actually use our material as part of their curriculum. So it's been working, and there's been a lot of success around it.
And it sounds like you've really considered the fact, as you highlighted earlier, there's different ways in which people will learn, right? So there's sometimes documentation, sometimes video content, and then of course hands-on. It sounds like you're really cognizant of the fact of presenting information in multiple ways.
Yeah, and we present it to the developers where the developers are. So if they're scanning their code using our product, if they're scanning their code and they find a cross-site scripting vulnerability, we'll actually tell them right in the IDE saying, here's the line of code that's vulnerable. If you want to learn more about it, click here. And they get sent right to a learn lesson where, we call that the just-in-time learning. So that, hey, we found a vulnerability. Let's learn about it right now and not put it on a to-do list that we never look at again.
And is that some of the things that you're tracking in terms of your metrics around your program? Like, what is it? The nickname is just-in-time is JIT events, right? Yeah. So are you tracking that kind of in the background to help feed and understand like where your program can grow?
Yeah, we're tracking that. Most of our activities. So obviously SEO is important, and if somebody searches cross-site scripting, Snyk Learn is near the top of Google, which is great for us SEO wise. But a lot of our traffic is coming right from the IDE. It's coming right from those just-in-time interactions where users are wanting to learn more, right? And that's what we found in our research and with our product. Developers want to learn. I think they'll admit if they don't know it. Well, maybe they won't admit out loud if they don't know anything, but they'll at least click on the link and want to learn more about it, which is good for everybody. I think the stat that I shared earlier was that our customers, our Snyk Learn customers, so those people who are using Snyk Learn, they report 22% more vulnerabilities fixed in a year than other customers. So that's
incredible.
It's very helpful. Yeah, people who are using it are fixing more vulnerabilities, and that's the whole goal.
And I would imagine those are the things like obviously one of the questions I want to ask around ROI, that's, I think, how customers can justify these types of programs, investing in these programs, right? So you probably could correlate support ticket decrease with that type of learning or things like that. Do you have those types of metrics in place where you can showcase the value of the investment of this, how it's impacting other parts of the organization?
We do, yeah. When we talk to enterprises and we try to, talk to them about Snyk Learn and this sort of value that we add to it, we do talk about that, saying how, we want there to be less vulnerabilities. We want to make sure that, yes, our software is working, that we're finding the vulnerabilities, but long-term goal is we don't want you to have any vulnerabilities. Learn about them, fix them, and then if you know about them, hopefully they don't happen again. So yeah, we have those metrics. We share those metrics with our customers, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're choosing us over some of these other learning platforms.
Right, because they can see. It sounds like they can see the effect firsthand. They can say, other customers like myself make this investment in Snyk, and this is how you're going to help me, not just in the software, which is important, which is incredible, but also you're going to actually help my staff in terms of their growth. Yeah,
and the people who tell us the most that it's working and that they're happy about this is not the administrators, it's the developers themselves. The developers are happy that they have access to this content, because we do some vulnerabilities that maybe they haven't heard of, or maybe that they haven't come across, especially as a junior dev or as a student. It's like, I want to learn more about that. How do I learn more? Well, it's all in one place for you. So it's nice.
Do you have other metrics that you can, you already have some really powerful ones. Do you have other ones where you can kind of correlate that learner experience to your own internal investments that you and your teams have made for the content?
Yeah, we look at user engagement, which is a big metric for us. And, how engaged are the users? Are they just simply clicking on the link, going to the lesson and leaving right away? Or are they actually, interacting with the widgets? We have a multiple choice question at the end of certain lessons. So, to verify learning. And we see that going up. As soon as we implemented, for example, we have like a certificate of completion for one of our learning paths. As soon as we implemented that, we saw activity go up. Developers wanted to have that completion rate. They wanted to not just scroll through the text, but actually understand it. So we do have all those metrics. Not a lot I could share right now, but it's working, which is why we're continuing on the path that we are, and we're looking to expand as well.
I like to jokingly say, like, everyone has to report to their manager's manager, the value of the program that you're working on.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you really do have some key metrics to be able to show your management team, hey, this is why this investment in Learn.Snyk is worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like I said, our usage is kind of, I've always said it's been a hockey stick, and, it's going right up, up and up and up and up and up and up and to the left, or whatever you want to say. It's going, and yeah, it's the customers are happy, developers are happy. So yeah, it's been really great. And of course, my manager's manager is happy about it.
Yeah. And I bet you, the other thing too, I think this is powerful. It showcases learning for, like, how can it affect your sales and marketing team. That's a pretty powerful statement to be able to say, if you're in a pre-sale cycle, and say, look, we value education so much, and we're going to invest our time and energies there. And this is the effect this can have on your prospects as well. So that's really neat.
Yeah. And I misspoke. I said up and to the left. It's up and to the right, if you want to be precise. Everyone,
I assume
everyone knew what I meant.
You're a left-hander. I was with you.
Yeah. I'm in a mirror right now, so it's just back.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, Tyler, how do we go to hop over to the next topic here, which is really just a blend in. So let's take a look at a learning track demo, because this is really, it's amazing what you've done. And go ahead. Why don't you give an overview of what that looks like?
Sure. Can I share the screen? All right. So about a year ago or so, we introduced learning paths at Snyk. And before that, we just had a bunch of lessons that, obviously not connected, but a bunch of lessons that developers could take. And one of the things that we heard from customers was they go to our site and they're just kind of overwhelmed. There's so much content, they don't know where to start. So we built many learning paths. We have 3 of them right now. And this sort of gets the user started. And one of them is the OWASP top 10. So it's all vulnerabilities part of the OWASP top 10. But we also partnered with NYU last year, and they were really impressed. Both the faculty and the students were impressed with the content and material that we had. So we partnered up with them, and we created a learning path called Security for Developers. And their students can take our lessons, and they can earn themselves a NYU badge, and they could show it off to their peers and stuff. So this is the NYU Tannen School of Engineering page. It talks about Snyk. It talks about the learning path. And I'll just jump to that learning path so everyone can see it here. I can download my certificate because I've already completed it. So go me. But if we scroll down, we have all these lessons. So broken access control, insecure hash, insecure randomness. So if I just click on one of these, we have the lesson here. It's available in a bunch of different ecosystems. So we show code examples, which is important for the developer. We want the developer to actually not just read through, what is a hash. We want them to learn what a hash is. And, here are some examples of that, what it looks like, how do you generate them in different languages. So I can just stick to JavaScript right now. We go through and we kind of show some code here on how to do it. We scroll down, we have this, this is our step-by-step widget in this one. Some of them we have chat boxes, some of them we have terminals. This one is what we call the step-by-step widget. So, students can actually walk through and see, what a vulnerability and what a successful attack would look like. Then we talk about, the under the hood part of it. So, why is this vulnerable? What's wrong with MD5, for example, as a hash? And then we talk about mitigation. We give some other examples. And then at the bottom, there's a quiz as well, too. So students at NYU are doing this for a handful of courses, quite a few courses here or quite a few lessons that they're taking. And like I said, if they complete all the lessons, they get a certificate of completion from us. They then go to their professor and say, hey, here's my certificate of completion. I completed it. Then they get some NYU badge, and, they get some stuff internally in their system, in their school as well, too. So that's sort of how it goes through. And if you go to product training is how you use our product. Security education is what I'm talking about right now. We have the Snyk top 10. So those are the top 10 vulnerabilities that we found that our product finds. The OWASP top 10 and security for developers. But we have a bunch of different lessons available for people to look at. And whether you're signed in or not, you can take a look at these lessons and go through the content.
And one of the things we had talked about in our kind of previous conversations was around, NYU is making this investment into really, like you talked about, like, security, real world type of work on what this looks like. Do you have any, is there any metrics or anything around how the success rate has been for those folks that walk out with that badge? And I know there's other programs as well. It's not just NYU, but are there others that have said wow, this really helped me in my first job, things like that?
Yeah, I've talked to students. I did a guest lecture at first to NYU, and then we have this stuff. And some of the NYU students have gotten in contact with me, and they've thanked me for the content and for the material, and as well as other students. I just had an email the other day from a student who just said, basically just a thank you that this is out there. So I think it's effective, and students are really enjoying it. And we're looking to expand to other universities as well too. We want to partner with more and offer, whether it's a specific badge for that institution or something else. We want to invest into students because we realize that certain things they might not be learning. And I did a research paper on this, not last year sometime. And it was talking about how universities, a lot of them do have a cybersecurity course available for computer science degrees, but very few of them actually have that as a mandatory course, and it's just being offered as an elective. So a lot of students are graduating potentially with no cybersecurity knowledge whatsoever, which is a scary thing, especially in this world where we read about attacks almost every other day. Yeah. So it's something that we want to do to make sure that students have access to the material, which is a long-term play, right? We're not going to see those effects tomorrow, but students who have that information, have that knowledge, years down the road, hopefully we're graduating and employing more developers who have better security awareness.
And kind of like what we talked about earlier, that NYU track kind of page and the different, the overall certification program, as well as the individual tracks. Would you see that as something that's portable into the enterprise to say, like, if I was going to build an enterprise developer, training program, it would look similar to that?
Yeah, and that's what we want to do. So we've been really expanding out to enterprises, and compliance is a big thing right now. And we want to be that tool for compliance. We want developers to be taking our courses. Again, compliance, some people just view it as a checkbox, hey, I did it, we're good. But we view it as long-term learning, and we want the developers to be taking this yearly, and we're always adding new courses and new materials. And so that, it is for organizations, and this can be a whole education plan, and we welcome them to use our material. Like we want that to be a part of it, because in the end, our goal is to, have better informed developers, smarter developers about security.
Right. And make them, like we've been talking about, right? Make them more hireable, right? Their skill sets when they're out there looking for jobs, and make them almost like the onboarding process a lot easier, because they're walking into an organization with some real tools in the toolbox, so to speak. Yeah,
if you're creating an onboarding from scratch, it's a lot of work. So if you can reuse materials, if you can connect with us and say, hey, we want our employees to be using, Snyk Learn, and we want our developers to be using Snyk as a product to make sure they're code secure, but we want them to using Snyk Learn to onboard them and to make sure that they're at that baseline that I keep talking about. Yeah, we would welcome that. Like that's what we want.
Do you mind showing? We had a question come up about the demo to show what a sample track looks like, and then the question kind of tied to that is do you mind sharing the LMS that you're using for that?
Sure. Yeah. So the LMS is something that we built ourselves. Because of the customization that we needed, this is a homegrown LMS system. We did look at others. I'm very familiar with LMS systems, being from the education sector. I've worked with quite a few of them. But for what we needed and for what we wanted to build, it's a custom build for us. And then the sample track is really, let me just share my screen again here, is really the learning paths that I was talking about. So all of these learning paths, for example, if we look at OWASP Top 10, again, I completed this, so I can download my certificate, but we break it down, broken access control, cryptographic failures, injection, insecure design, and then a user, as they go through this, they'll get the green check mark, and they can go through each lesson. If they start with a lesson, they can go to the next lesson at the bottom. We kind of guide them through this learning path. And then at the end, we allow them to download that certificate of completion. And depending how the organization's using it, maybe they keep that as a record for, again, compliance, or maybe they send that to HR so that they know their employee completed something. We have organizations using it in various different ways.
Got it. That makes sense. So then I think one of the slides that, there it is. So what are some tools and tech for hands-on learning? So obviously LMS will be first and foremost, I think, for especially the folks that are attending this webinar. That's a very common question. What else? What else do you see that's super important to have in your toolkit?
For developers specifically, I think the hands-on learning really does need to be hands-on. You need to start showing them some code and some source code. Allow them to potentially learn on their own code too, right? What we give them, and we give them some sample code, but having them actually, let's pull your own code, let's fix it, let's walk you through how to fix it. That would be amazing. So stuff like that. I know stuff that Instruct is doing as well too with the lab environments and being able to do that right in your browser. Really cool features, really cool stuff that, again, you're not necessarily taking the developer out to like a live session. You're not asking them to attend, an 8-hour training session. It's like, hey, open up a new tab right here. We're going to show you, we're going to walk through how to do something. There's all kinds of great tools out there that allow you to do that.
Yeah. One of the things we're super proud of with Instruct, and I use myself as a customer, was the fact I could provide contextualized sandboxes. So it wasn't just like a VM, like we've been talking about the whole time. A VM with a vanilla, piece of technology loaded onto it that hopefully I could show the example. It's like I can serve up and instruct real live environments with, security certificates and networking and all the different protocols that a customer would need to run a real version of their software. And what's fun about it is, then you can really start to explore. You're like, all right, you want to see what a real vulnerability in the real world looks like? Let's do it. So that's why I've always, favored Instruct for those types of things. A question just came up. Do you do instructor-led training, and what are some effectiveness, of your portal relates to classroom training? So, okay, I'm sorry, I'm reading as I'm talking. For instructor-led training, do you use the same techniques and like that same portal to do that, or do you have another way in which you do that when you're doing it live?
Yeah, we have a DevRel team, which does a lot of, they'll do like bug bashes, and they'll do other events that they hold. And they do use the Snyk Learn lessons at time to show, what a vulnerability is, how to do it. And they'll use that in combination with a live vulnerability that they'll do. They'll actually bring up an IDE, and depending what the environment is, they'll show a real vulnerability in action. But they'll use our lessons to kind of walk through. Hey, this is the bad stuff that happened. Let's look at a lesson to help mitigate it. So in our instructor-led training, we use a combination of both, the lessons and a bigger live kind of vulnerability attack. And then the second question of any ideas how the effectiveness of your portal relates to classroom teaching. I'm not quite sure if I understand the question, but for me specifically, I still teach part-time. And I will use our lessons for that. The students don't necessarily have to be signed in. They don't have to create an account, but I'll have them at least read the content, and hopefully they're reading it. Then I'll build my own quiz inside our own, LMS. To make sure that they're learning it. But I think faculty rely a lot on outside resources, and I think this is just another good one for them.
That makes sense. And so, another question came in. What types of conversations are you having with your leadership about education, and then how do you position the value to them?
Well, thankfully, our leadership values education. I think it's really, they know it's important. We obviously know it's important, and we're pushing that. So we don't have to, at least internally at Snyk, we're not convincing anyone that education is important. But what we want to do is help convince other organizations that education is important. Sure. And like I said, education is very hard. If you want to, if you're a small or a medium-sized organization, you might not have a team that can help with that onboarding, or a team that could build all these educational materials. That's really, really difficult. And so we want to make sure that we're easily digestible, that we're easy to use, very friendly. And like I said, if our companies want to use us, we welcome that for sure. Okay,
excellent. Another question that came in. So how do you decide, you had talked earlier about the modules, the bite-sized modules. We're a big fan of that here at Instruct too. And we know attention spans are definitely smaller these days. How do you decide what's the right size for a training module? And then how do you measure, how do you know you've hit the sweet spot for a training module?
Yeah, I think a little bit of trial and error for kind of that sweet spot. We've had some lessons that have been really, really long. And you can just kind of see the drop off for users, after they scroll through the lesson, maybe it's like 50% of the way, and then they kind of jump out. We found that this what we have right here, text of maybe 1,500 to 2,000 words. If we can get through it in about 20 minutes, give or take, we found that to be the sweet spot for us. But every organization's different. some people with training, they really utilize video, which is great for some things. But we like text still, for the fact that a developer can, hit Control or Command F. I had to look at my keyboard. Control or Command F, and search for what they want. Because some developers, they have a vulnerability. They just want to know how to fix it, right? They just want to jump to that mitigation section, and we want to make that easy for them. That
makes sense. So from what you've seen with Instruct itself, how does it address some of the hands-on needs, like from your experience with Instruct?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I was just wondering, like, from your insights, like what you've seen with Instruct so far, like what are some of the kind of features or functionalities that resonate well with hands-on learning? Yeah,
Instruct is great in that sense. It's, like I think you just mentioned it, you can kind of start up that environment really quickly and go through everything. If we wanted to have a vulnerability, we can create that environment. We can create that in an instant and have the developer kind of, like I said, open up a new tab and go through that. There's lots of benefits to Instruct, and we met with the Instruct team late last year, I think, and we're kind of going through the process. We haven't implemented Instruct yet. That's full disclosure to everyone here. But it was something that we looked at and something that we'll continue to look at as we want to expand and offer labs and stuff. I think if you're going to have a platform and offer labs, there's Instruct's a great tool for that.
Yeah, we should have said that up front. We're both passionate about learning, and that's what we're here today. The product is almost like the secondary bit. Like, I think there's a lot of alignment, but yeah, there's different ways to go at it, right? So that's to me, I'm passionate as well around that hands-on experience, and how do you capture like technical people, and get them engaged and get them excited.
Yeah, I think we have similar goals. I think we're both trying to achieve, some of the same things here. And yeah, we just two different sites trying to, both educate.
Yeah, exactly. And do you have any like particular tools? I think I asked this earlier, but just to make sure I understand, for you yourself as an educator, is there anything you recommend in your tool stack that you particularly like, that you could share with other educators? Maybe it's tied to like live events, maybe it's tied to developing content, things like that?
Yeah, one thing that I enjoy doing with students, and this is a story I told you in our pre-read here. I teach a course. It's like a full stack development course, but it uses PHP, which I know a lot of people don't like PHP, but we'll just skip over that part. And in the first month of the course, I get students to build a website, and very easy to do with PHP. I get them to they'll have the PHP tags, and they'll mix it in with HTML tags, and they'll maybe add some CSS. And anyways, at the end of 4 weeks, that index.php file is not nice. It is a very ugly file. But students, they like it. They get accustomed to it. And then, it's like that week 5, I turned the switch on and said, okay, we're going to do an MVC framework. And we're actually going to make this look good. And so I think, in my experience, it's important to teach students. You don't want to teach them bad code, but you want to show them an environment where it's not perfect, right? Yeah. Show them that legacy environment, show them a not perfect environment. And then let's say, okay, let's fix this. Let's make this good. Let's make this usable. But if you always put students in that pristine environment where everything works and, they don't have to kind of overcome any hurdles, I think that's when they kind of get that little bit of a rude awakening when they enter the workforce and like, oh, this isn't perfect. What do I do now? How do I fix this?
Yeah. And you talked about engagement earlier. Is that really the driver for capturing like how that the learner has grasped the concepts? To your point, you're giving them an environment with all the Band-Aids and all the rough edges and all those things. How do you really measure to make sure like, yep, they got it, even though it wasn't pristine. It wasn't what they expected, but we know that they got what we needed to teach them.
Yeah, I think students, and it's really enjoyable as a faculty member when you see that light switch moment, right? When it kind of clicks on. And I find that, typically, students week 1, they'll be like, oh, PHP is easy. I can echo something and it shows up in the browser, and then week 3, week 4, they're like, oh, well, I want to modify the header, but I have 4 files. I need to copy and paste and do it all over. And then it's when we introduce that, MVC framework, and they kind of understand that stuff's broken up, and they kind of, it clicks in, and you actually see the success, and you see the progress happen a lot faster. I know with Snyk Learn, I saw the question as well too. How do we validate the learner has grasped it? With Snyk Learn, a user can simply scroll through it and say they completed the lesson. And I know some people who are doing security awareness training, maybe they just fast forward to the end of the video and they just say they watched it. we wanted to avoid that. So we do have a very simple multiple choice question at the end. We're looking to expand this, to maybe tests and maybe something more, but that multiple choice question really validates if the learner has learned something.
Yeah.
And it's not a gotcha question. It's not any kind of double negatives. We don't want the learner to get the question wrong.
Sure.
We want them to get it right. So we make the question relevant and I don't want to say easy, but we make it very relevant to the course, and we want them to get perfect. We want them to pass.
Right. At the end of the day, I mean, really, that's where education is even going as we implement more techniques like AI. Is if the learner didn't get it, that's okay. How can we actually help recommend new and other training? Right. In a future world, how cool would it be to be like, well, TJ, it didn't seem like you quite got that. Let's have you do one more before you go back to your work. So, validation, I think, is probably the most important thing that we can do for our learners.
Yeah. I mean, if people are, and we're obviously in a different situation, but if people are paying to learn, you want to make sure they're getting their money's worth out of it. And so you want that validation, both for you as a faculty and as a student. They want to make sure they're getting everything out of it that they can. For
sure. So the last question I think that came through was, do you also have your proprietary software to build your e-learning content?
So like I said, we have, we built our own custom LMS that we have, which that's how we build all of our content. But to write the content, like when we start from scratch, I'm just using a doc. Like it's, starts as text and then we build it out. We use, we have some graphic design and stuff. Thankfully, I have a team around me that is, I have a team of developers. There's designers. There's all kinds of like really great people who make up Snyk Learn. And I think, the product that you see is a combination of all of us.
It sounds like you have a great team over there helping you.
Yeah, it's an amazing team.
Excellent. Well, Tyler's joining back up. I think we're at time.
Well, I really, really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. Like, it was a very great conversation. I know I learned a ton based off the engagement from the audience. It seems like, everybody else really learned a ton, and we appreciate you all being engaged and taking the time to join us. With that, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be sharing out the recording here within the next 24 hours or so. Also, I see there's a few more questions coming in, so we'll take those. We'll get back to you here and we'll shoot you an answer offline. Also, if you have any other questions that maybe come up later when you're watching this as a recording, just shoot us an email to hello@Instruct. I'll make sure they find their way to Michael, TJ, whoever it's most relevant for. But then also, if you're interested in learning more about Instruct, or you just want to, talk to an Instruct expert, you can scan this code right here and actually, request to check out the platform from one of our experts. And, again, Michael, TJ, I just really want to thank you both for everything, and audience, I thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate having you here.
No problem. I can answer one more question quick if we don't have to disconnect yet. It's a question.
Let's go for it then.
Question by Dave.
I missed it. What have you found is a good lecture hands-on ratio?
So if I'm in a classroom with computers, which is what I prefer, I like doing 20 and 20. So 20 minutes of lecturing, 20 minutes hands-on, then typically kind of like take a break for 15 or so minutes. Or mix that in with like a Q&A and then a break. I find students, kind of that mixture is really, really good and works. Some environments I'm teaching at a podium for 3 hours and there's no computers around. So it's a little trickier because you don't have that hands-on ratio. But having that hands-on experience, I think, especially for computer science, you can teach in a classroom with computers, very, very useful. But not everyone has that opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, look, all these people thanking you, all the great comments. So yeah, again, thank you all so much for the time, and we'll share the recording soon. Everybody have a good rest of your week.
Thank you both so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Have a great day.